used to work at a pretty iconic record store on Melrose back in the mid-90s. Vinyl was still big then, and we got all kinds of people coming through. Regulars, musicians, tourists, weirdos. It was LA, so nothing really surprised me. I was in my early 20s, just out of college, and honestly, I loved the job. It did not pay great, but the people were interesting, and I got first dibs on some rare pressings. There was one guy I remember more often than most. He came in a lot, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. Early 20s, quiet, always wore the same oversized flannel, even when it was hot outside. He would ask about obscure bands, sometimes one so niche I had to dig through the back just to double check that we did not have a copy hiding somewhere. He wasn't creepy at first, just kind of awkward, did not smile much, just a little off if you ask me. I usually worked the afternoon to close shift, and we'd chat here and there when he came in. Small talk, nothing personal, or so I thought. One evening, we were talking about some Japanese import when he casually mentioned something about how it must have been cool having a dad who was born in America. I kind of looked at him confused. I never told him that. I never told anyone at work that. It wasn't something that I hid, but it wasn't something that I'd bring up either. I played it off like maybe one of my coworkers had mentioned it, but I asked around the next day. None of them remember saying anything about it to him. One of the other clerks joked that maybe I had a stalker. We all laughed it off, but it stayed in the back of my mind. A week or so later, I was driving home from work late on Saturday. I had this beat-up 88 Corolla that overheated constantly, and sure enough, it gave out around 11:30 p.m. It was summer, and even that late it was hot as hell. There were no cell phones back then, so I locked up the car and started walking. I knew there was a payphone outside an elementary school about 2 miles up the road, so I headed there. When I finally got there, I was drenched in sweat. I called a cab company and gave them the location. They said it'd be about 20 minutes. I hung up the phone and sat down on the curb next to the booth. A minute later, the payphone started ringing. Now, this was before spam calls or prank call culture was a big thing. It wasn't common for payphones to ring, and if they did, it usually meant someone dialed the wrong number. I figured that's what happened, but I was bored and figured why not pick it up. "Bad luck about your car," the voice said to me. "Talk to me until your ride gets there." I recognized the voice instantly. It was the guy from the store. There was this strange, almost amused tone in his voice, like he thought it was funny. I didn't say anything, just hung up and walked across the street to the gas station. I waited there until the cab came. The whole ride home I was shaking. That guy had followed me. He had to have. There was no other explanation. He'd either followed me from work or my apartment, waited until my car broke down, then somehow found out where the nearest payphone was and called it. I remember I did not sleep that night. First thing the next morning, I called the store and told them I quit. No 2 weeks, no explanation. I packed a few bags and drove straight to my parents' house in Pasadena. I did not even go back to my apartment for the rest of my stuff. I had a friend grab it for me a few days later. A few months went by. I was working part-time at a bookstore near my parents' place and trying to forget about everything in the past. Eventually, I went back to LA to visit some old friends and swung by the record store just to say hi. That's when one of the guys told me that the flannel guy had been arrested for kidnapping. He didn't know all the details, just that he'd been taken in a few weeks after I quit. Something about a girl going missing and being found in some storage unit, tied up. I did not ask for more details. I did not want to know them. And to this day, I don't know how long he was watching me, or how much he really knew about my life. But I do know that if my car hadn't broken down, if I picked a different route home, or waited just a few more minutes, it could have been me. I haven't worked a retail job since. This happened a few years ago, when I was still living at home. It was a Saturday night, around 2 a.m., and I was home alone. My parents had gone out to my dad's annual company party, one of those events where everyone drinks too much and stays out way too late. They wouldn't be back until the morning. I decided to take advantage of the quiet and clean the house as a surprise for them. They've been working long hours, and I figured they deserved to come home to a spotless place. I had music playing on my phone, and just loud enough to keep me in a good mood. All the lights in the house were on. I mentioned that because when a house is fully lit, it doesn't really feel like nighttime, and I wasn't spooked or anything. I was actually enjoying myself. I was in the kitchen when I thought I heard a door creak. I paused my music, and I didn't hear anything else. Then I heard it again, clear as day, creaking. I walked into the hallway and saw the door to my sister's room slowly moving. It was creaking open, just a little at a time. Her light was off, and I immediately thought that was weird. I hadn't gone into her room. She moved out recently, and there was nothing in there to clean. The house was sealed up for the night. No windows were open, and there wasn't much wind outside anyway. Still, sometimes doors in the house do move on their own because the frames are old and a little warped. Trying to keep the mood light, I said out loud, "Hey, could you close the door? I'd appreciate it." I was halfway joking, trying to keep myself from getting creeped out. The door started closing. Not fast, not loud, just slowly inching its way back toward the frame with the same creak as before. I stopped in my tracks. The timing was too perfect. I laughed nervously and said, "Actually, it's cool. You can keep it open." The door stopped. Then it began creaking open again. That's when I got goosebumps. I stood there staring at it. There was no wind, there was no draft, and I really had no explanation. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I'd freaked myself out. Maybe it was some strange air pressure thing. I walked past it quickly and tried to ignore it. Went back down to wiping down the counters, but I couldn't bring myself to put the music back on. I needed to hear the house, and I kept hearing that door. It would creak a little, then stop, then creak again. Always that door, never any others. I was getting tired and figured I was just psyching myself out. I walked past the room again, and this time more annoyed than scared. The door was wider now, and I couldn't see anything inside. It was pitch black. I did not even look in. I just said, "Just close the door already. Cool, thanks, ghosts." That's when it slammed, loud and sudden, like someone inside had heard me and decided to scare the hell out of me on purpose. I jumped back and just stared. I did not move for maybe 30 seconds. My heart was racing. I knew how my sister's door worked. You had to turn the knob fully to close it. Otherwise, it just bounced off the frame. unless you slammed it hard enough to overcome the tension in the latch. This door was shut, fully shut. And then I noticed something that made me feel sick to my stomach. Under the door, through the small crack at the bottom, there was light. That room had been dark all night. I hadn't touched the light switch. My sister wasn't home. No one else was supposed to be there. I did not open that door. I did not move. I backed away slowly, walked straight into my room, locked the door, and sat in my bed with the lights on. I couldn't sleep. I did not make a sound. I just waited for my parents to come home, listening to every single creak and bump in the house. When they finally came in around 4 a.m., I came out and told them everything. My dad checked the room. Nothing. The light was off again. No one there. But I know what I saw, and I know how I felt. That night still messes with me. I don't know if someone had been in the house. I don't know if it was some kind of messed up prank, or if I caught someone trying to hide. All I know is that door moved on its own, responded to what I said, and ended up shut with the light on inside a room no one should have been in. I still think about it sometimes when I'm up late and I hear a door creak. I used to live out in Arkansas, a middle of nowhere type place. It was my mom's rental property, 3-bedroom, 2-story house that she let me stay in for a while. It sat just off the highway, and behind it was a long dirt road that led to a handful of other properties a few acres away. Pretty secluded overall, even if the highway ran right in front of it. At the time, I lived alone. No roommates, no pets, just me and a lot of quietness. I did not mind it, really. It gave me space. But one Saturday night, around midnight, that quiet got broken. I was still up, sitting in what I called my PC room. It was just an office where I kept my desktop and played games or watched YouTube. All the lights were off except the glow of my monitor. I wasn't even wearing headphones, which ended up being important. Through the wall, just outside the window next to my desk, I thought I heard voices. At first it didn't register. I paused the video I was watching and listened. Nothing. Then again, faint, but definitely voices. Low, muffled, like someone was whispering or speaking quietly. That porch ran right along the front of the house, and my PC room had one of the only windows that overlooked it. The problem was, I had no blinds on most of the windows in that place, including the big ones in the living room. Just wide open glass. I hadn't bothered to put anything up, because like I said, I was in the middle of nowhere. But at that moment, it felt like a massive oversight. I did not know if I had locked the front door or not. I usually didn't. It was that kind of area where people didn't lock up unless they were heading out of town. I stayed frozen in my chair for a second, then slowly stood up and made my way to the hallway, ducking low so I wouldn't be visible through any windows. My bedroom was down that hallway. I got there, shut the door gently behind me, and locked it. Then I went to the closet and grabbed my shotgun. I never had to use it for anything before, but I wasn't about to play tough guy and check things out without it. I turned off my phone flashlight, sat on the floor, and tried to stay quiet. I wasn't sure what to do. Calling the cops felt excessive. I did not even know if anyone was actually inside or if I just imagined it. So I took my iPhone, turned on the camera, slid it under the gap in the door, and tilted it up just enough to see the hallway. There was nothing and it looked empty. But I kept watching. I must have sat there with the gun across my lap for 2 or 3 hours. I did not hear the voices again. Didn't hear footsteps or doors opening. It was just silent. Eventually, I guess I dozed off, because the next thing I remember was sunlight coming through my window. I checked the whole house that morning. Nothing was taken. No signs anyone had come in. I checked the front door. It was locked. So either they tried and bailed, or maybe they were never planning to come in at all. But it still left me with a weird feeling in my gut. I kept thinking about it all day. Later that week, I found out something that made my stomach drop. A neighbor, someone who lived about half a mile down that dirt road behind my place, had a son who'd been in trouble with the law. Apparently, he'd gotten arrested in another state, managed to escape during transport or something, and came back to Arkansas. Then, when he came back, he stayed at their house, which was just through the trees, maybe a 4-minute walk from mine. I asked around and found out the timeline. He got back around the same weekend I heard those voices on my porch. Not days before, that same damn night. Cops ended up finding and arresting him at that house a few days later, but he'd been out and moving around the area before that. I don't know if it was him on my porch, but if it wasn't, it was someone else, and that's almost worse. I lock my doors now, every night. It doesn't matter if I'm in the middle of the woods or a big city. I don't leave it a chance anymore.